So then in a
Perfect.
bit, as soon as we can start. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you with the presentation so we can, before we go into the questions on distribution channels.
Yes. So I'm Italian, as my slide show. I'm Italian like Marangoni, and actually I'm from Milan, and I moved to London 13 years ago. As you said, I started my career in Burberry, and I've been always working with buyers, international buyers, because in Burberry I was dealing with the European buyers, so big department stores, multi-brand stores. So I was actively involved in setting the distribution channels for the brand in this specific region of Europe. And after Burberry, I moved to Matthew Williamson, a UK designer. And in Matthew, I was dealing with continental Europe, Middle East, Asia, Russia. And again, I was dealing with the big buyers for the distribution. Just to give an idea, some of my accounts, they were Galeries Lafayette, Le Bon Marché, Printemps, Zoom. So some of these department stores and businesses that probably most of the emerging designers they are planning to target in order to set an effective distribution network. And then after Matthew, I moved to Pringle of Scotland. And there I was dealing again with the European markets, and Joseph, where I was again managing the European market, so the European buyers for the distribution of the brands. So this is just in a sort of very tiny nutshell my background. And as you said, at the moment I'm also working with Startup Bootcamp, in particular for the fashion tech businesses, so new innovative ideas in the fashion tech segment. And it's a very exciting journey. I can definitely say that it's so exciting to see new businesses, new entrepreneurs that looking at the two major forces that at the moment they are reshaping fashion, so sustainability and digital. So exciting to see how they can come out with blue ocean ideas, so new opportunities to tap and grow for their businesses. And behind Startup Camp, there are also big businesses such as Prada and Lorenzo Bertelli, so Miuccia son. So it's a very exciting part.
Sennait, the Startup Bootcamp in Milan, is it only for Italian brands or can international
So
brands apply?
everyone can apply. Actually, the applications are open at the moment. So if you go to the website, Startup Bootcamp Fashion Tech, you can apply. The USP of the business needs to be an innovative idea, either in sustainability or digital.
Okay.
And at the moment, the selections are open. So definitely, it's a very good opportunity to explore for any fashion tech companies, fashion tech brand that would be interested to apply.
So since sort of when you started your career, let's say, it's 10 years ago more
Yeah,
to now,
yeah.
distribution channels have changed mostly also because of technology, other issues sort of as sustainability and traceability, transparency. What, how did you see this evolution and sort of what do brands now need, sort of what key challenges are there now for emerging brands?
So, as you said, the current scenario is a very changing scenario, and probably in the last 12 months, we witnessed so many changes and big trends that reshaped the consumer behavior, reshaped the supply chain of most of the businesses in fashion. So, definitely we looked at fashion after these 12 months, after these 15 months in a different way. So emerging brands, they are coping with a very difficult and different scenario from what it was fashion before. But looking in a practical way to some key challenges that emerging brands at the moment they are facing, definitely the cash flow is still one of the biggest challenge. If you think that when you are an emerging brand, you have high costs related to setting up the business, running the business, sourcing the fabrics, understanding where your production can be made. So definitely the cash flow is this big challenge, big issue that for a long time has been um, has been the most difficult aspect for a brand. But alongside the cash flow, there is definitely production and distribution. Production is so important for an emerging brand because differently from an established brand, an emerging brand has to set from scratch the right supply chain. So selecting the suppliers, understanding in which countries the production can be made in line with the quality, in line with the price point for the product. And next to production, the third and probably the main topic of today is the distribution. So this is the 1 million question: where to sell, how to sell. Is it better to sell to the department store? Is it better to sell to multi-brand store? Is it better just to sell through the online channel, setting up a website? Unfortunately, there is not just one answer that can fit all the different scenarios. It's interesting to see at different brands that they, try different formulas. I'm pretty sure that everyone remembers when in 2015, Self-Portrait came out, and they started from the online arena, and then later they moved to the wholesale channel. So they started selling through the website and through the social media. And later they started approaching big department store like Harrods, Selfridges, RV Nichols. So it's nice to see that just because of this evolving scenario, there are different case studies somehow, different examples that brands can look at in order to set their way for the development of an effective distribution network.
Do you think for an emerging brand it's easier to start online and then maybe move into a physical brick and mortar store, or is it vice versa? Or as you said, it's maybe different for each brand?
I think it's different for each brand because obviously you need to look at the USP of the brand, the target customer of the brand, where the consumers are buying that brand, the profiling of the consumer.
Sure.
There are different approaches, but it's also important to remember that you need, it's true that online can represent an arena where you can make money in an easy way, but you still need that brand recognition and brand awareness that big department store and important multi-brand stores can give you. In a practical way, you can sell online and probably you can have cash in because you make sales. But it's so important to be in Harrods. It's so important if you are a streetwear brand, you want to be in Antonioli. If you are a contemporary brand, you want to be in Selfridges. So it's a balance between what you can achieve from selling online. That definitely it's a very good way for getting your money in, but at the same time, you want to be in those stores because they can contribute to your brand awareness and your brand recognition.
Of course.
So it's a balance between these two forces.
But sometimes, obviously, the objective might be, yes, I want to be in Harrods or in Antonioli, but maybe you're not ready yet as a brand, or maybe the
Yeah, yeah.
product,
But
So
in
I
fact, as
guess,
I said, the point needs to go back to the target customer because at the beginning, even your range plan, when you're looking at your range plan, probably your range plan has a very limited number of SKU. So it's important probably to understand exactly who is your target customer, what do they want, and then when you're growing and you're trying to scale up your brand, looking at the product, you are ready for those. Retailers. But at the same time, testing some of those retailers can give you the answer on what you should change, what you should improve in your range plan, in your product mix. Because once you are online, you don't have that constructive feedback. But as soon as you entered, even probably a smaller store than Antonioli, but as soon as you enter the B2B arena, you can get that constructive feedback coming from the buyers in terms of price point, in terms of changes for your product mix that can help you to make the right changes into your product and scale your business.
So much has changed since the early days. What so we've looked at we touched on the key challenges for an emerging brand, but what
Yeah.
are the forms of distributions of a brand that they should look at? So like now, for example, perfect scenario. You know, we're at Costa Rica Fashion Week. We've got not only our students from Miami that are showing their collections, but we have other
Yeah.
schools that are showing their collections. So how would you, or what would you say would be the next step for them to actually break into the market? You know, that's it. They graduated now. They're showing their collection. How could we help them to emerge?
So in general, you can have a two-step approach. So the first approach is trying to approach some buyers thanks to some trade shows. So attending big trade shows, international trade shows that can help to give that visibility. Some of the trade shows could be Tranoi or White Milan. And in general, in these trade shows, buyers, they attend trade shows. So when I say buyers, the people that are responsible for the buying budgets in department store, multi-brand stores, they attend these trade shows in order to discover new brands. So the channel of the trade shows could be a very good way for getting that visibility. But at the same time, another good reflection is which sort of distribution these emerging designers they want to have, because the distinction is between B2B and B2C distribution channels. So the B2B channels are business to business. So basically, you are selling your product, your collection during the selling campaign time to the buyers. And you can either sell in a wholesale formula where the buyers they buy your brand at the buying price and then they resell with a markup. Looking at the wholesale channel, you can have online or offline wholesalers. So online wholesalers could be Net-a-Porter, and offline wholesalers could be Harrods, Browns, Matches, multi-brand stores. They buy the collection, probably during the first 2-3 season. The budget commitment is a small budget commitment. They buy from you and then they resell your collection, applying a markup. Then looking at the B2B options, in general, as soon as the brand is growing, as soon as the budget commitment from certain retailers is growing, another option for distribution could be concessions. So in general, if the performance of the brand inside these retailers is positive, in general, the retailer, they tend to approach the brand and propose the opening of a concession. So basically a space inside the department store or multi-brand store. And these are the B2B options. Then you can look at B2C options, where the online probably is the main form of channels that can guarantee easy distribution of the brand. In the online, you can identify either the website, so you set up your website for selling straight to your final consumer. And in general, this is the option that many emerging designers they are choosing. It's a very good way for testing the products, starting having some initial feedback from your final consumers. The only big challenge when it comes to an emerging brand setting up the online website for selling is really having an effective shipping
Yes.
process that works. That also take into considerations any regulations for exporting into other countries, because obviously that is an area where emerging designers they need to have the right legal framework and knowledge, because
But
otherwise,
I know some couriers actually have deals or packages for brands. I know also like not just the label has, teamed up with certain
yes,
couriers as well.
yeah. So those are special online marketplaces that they can help emerging designers. It's so important to guarantee this educational and support element when emerging designers are starting their journey for the development of a distribution network, because The journey is hard, and it's very easy to make mistakes, and obviously these mistakes sometimes they have an impact from a cost perspective. So
Sure. Well,
anything that will support that
Well,
is really good.
speaking of costs, what I've noticed when I mentor, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well, and also with students, is sort of when they start pricing their stuff, and maybe they overcharge or they undercharge, and it's kind of getting them to understand how to find the right price range, especially if they're emerging on what to sell the product and how to sell the product. And I hear sometimes many people saying, well, I'm not going to spend so much money on a brand I don't know when I can spend the equivalent amount on Prada because I know that brand. So there's always this sort of unfortunate scenario of, do I have to lower my pricing just because I'm an emerging brand? Or so what advice would you give about costs there? I know you touched on
So
production with that is sort of links to this.
Definitely pricing is an important aspect, and probably we can have another talk on the pricing. I always suggest to look at the range plan, having in mind a sort of pyramid, because you need to make sure, looking at your range plan, to have enough products at the bottom of the pyramid. So then those products, they will be your entry price point products, and those they will be generating sales. Those products in general, they have a very simple design. They don't have embellishment. They don't have any special crazy fabrics. Those products, they just lead the sales. So they will be basic, but they will be helping you to generate sales. Then in the middle of your pyramid, looking at the range plan, you need to make sure to have a good number of items that they will be attracting your consumers because they have some signature elements of your label, of your DNA. So in terms of embroidery, comparing to the other group, you might have a bit more embroidery and then different fabrics, more precious fabrics. And then at the top of the pyramid, you're going to be having just those crazy items, super expensive items. But those crazy items, they will be limited comparing to the bottom of the pyramid where you have the majority of your product. And those items, they will be giving like a sort of strong representation of the DNA and of the USP of your brand. Having in mind that pyramid, somehow it can really help you to create different opportunities of sales according to the spending power of different buyers, and then also according to the spending power of different consumers. Because even if you look at a big established brand, at the range plan, I don't know, of Gucci, and you look at a specific product categories, bags, for example, if you spend like 15 minutes on the website, for sure you will be finding some entry price point bags, and those bags, they will be attracting specific retailers, or some Harvey Nichols retailers, for example, and then other crazy bags, more expensive, they will be attracting different retailers like Harrods or Dover Street Market. So somehow that pyramid can be a perfect mirror of the spending power of the retailers, but also the spending power of your final consumers. In this way, you try to accommodate different consumers.
And that's a bit tricky, especially with the rise of like Generation Z, and
Yeah.
then obviously you don't want to focus just on one segment, but you try and capture as many as you can. But then, how do you go about doing that? So like I guess also when it comes to distribution channels, do you start segmenting where you're gonna maybe focus on one segment of market
Market.
compared to the other one? No, like maybe you'll focus on
Yeah,
social
yeah.
media for Gen Z and somewhere else for my
Yeah, you
generation.
can either conduct by markets or by targets. I remember in the brands that I worked with, the segmentation was also by regions because looking at the American market or UK market, those two markets, you need to have a range plan that is ready then to be bought by big retailers,
Yeah.
by big volume drivers, department store. But looking at France and Italy, you have a majority of small retailers, luxury boutiques. Before we mentioned Antonioli, but then the list can be longer even
Sure.
with Luisa Via Roma, Dieci Corso Como. So probably those retailers, they are smaller, so they're not volume drivers like Harrods and Selfridges and the big department stores. And the distribution strategy for those retailers will be different from when you are approaching a department store. First of all, in terms of the budget commitment when you're going into a department store is higher. The budget commitment when you're going to sell to multi-brand store is a medium-sized budget. So yeah, definitely segmentation is the word.
Absolutely. And here in in the US, it's such a huge geographical place that we have to
Yeah.
segment even further because we have the East Coast, the West Coast, and sort of also
Yeah,
the middle belt.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
And
it's so huge compared to the UK. So there's all these extra
yeah,
elements that we have to put into our business plans to decide where we actually want to go.
exactly.
Sennait,
Yeah, yeah. And this element of the geographical differences is playing a huge role.
yes. Um, what are the advantages to develop a good distribution channel for wholesale?
I want to show you a few little images because I
Okay.
mentioned all of these different options, and then maybe it's easier also visually to
Okay.
see how they are different concessions. So this is wholesale. So we mentioned wholesale. So when you are in a wholesale distribution option, basically your stock will be hanging on a rail. And then here I mentioned some of the retailers where you can have a wholesale agreement. You can have physical wholesale. So here I just listed physical wholesale. So Browns here in London, Ten Corso Como, Tsum in Moscow, Harrods, Antonioli. But here the list could be also with all the American department store, American multi-brand stores. But in the wholesale, even the representation of your brand, it's very simple. It's just on a rail, and it's the role of the buyer when they're buying your brand in a wholesale agreement. The buyer becomes like a sort of curator, no? So from looking at your bigger range plan, they just select few items that, according to the price point, according to the shape, according to the product, they will be potentially selling in the store. Then this is the concession. So visually, when you're moving from a wholesale distribution option, that is this case, when you're moving to a concession, you have a proper space inside a retailer. So immediately you can see that the brand representation is stronger. You have a wider representation of your product. Obviously, this is a late stage in a sort of timeline for the development of a brand. You start from wholesale, and that concession comes much, much later. In general, retailers, when they're proposing you to open a concession, means that the brand is profitable, the brand is working. And then this is online B2C. So the first part of the slide is when you're running your own website. And then the second part is online B2B when you're selling through marketplace, Net-a-Porter. And then here I also listed when you're selling through Instagram. This is an aspect that is growing more and more. And probably during this pandemic time, the digital acceleration that everyone is talking about,
Yes.
even the State of Fashion 2021 by McKinsey is mentioning this digital acceleration. It was part of the 2020 report, and then again 2021 alongside with sustainability. But it seems that more and more brands they tend to use Instagram for breaking the ice and really try to target the younger audience. And then the last step is when you have your proper store, but then obviously is the late stage for the timeline of evolution of a brand. And then I want to show you also something. It's a bit more probably this. This is in a sort of timeline how the different distribution options they will evolve as soon as the brand is growing. So in general, at the beginning, when you are an emerging brand, most of your business comes from the online, and then you have a few in this light pink, few retailers in the wholesale, because obviously you need to build your brand awareness, you need to build your brand recognition across different markets. As soon as you becomes more recognized, you are a semi-established brand, so you have a mix between multiple channels. So you have concession, you have wholesale, you have online, your own online, and then you have also the online through marketplaces. And then in general, as soon as you become big, you tend to have your own store alongside with franchise, and you try to reduce as much as possible the wholesale, because you really want to make most of your business growing through the retail, so straight B2C to the final consumer. So this is just a quick summary,
Thank
visual
you.
summary of the distribution that we discussed.
And just going to what you mentioned earlier, sort of production and traceability and transparency. I know there are platforms out there like Natasha Frank at Source Mapping, or there's EON,
Yeah.
where it's really great because
Yeah.
you can see maybe if you're looking for a particular type of textiles or accessories, you can actually source where they come from. I know EON has teamed up with YKK, where on the zip
Yeah.
pulls you can scan the zip pull and you got all the information on there. So I love how industries are sort of taking this so seriously and how they're working with each other to actually, put this traceability. But then again, you mentioned something that it is expensive for an emerging brand to do all of this. So what would your advice be for an emerging brand to sort of show this traceability, or be more sensible and sustainable when it comes to the production parts of these channels of distribution?
I'm glad that you mentioned this aspect of the traceability, because even in the State of Fashion by McKinsey 2021, they're talking about this. In particular, they moved from the trend that they recognized in 2020 about sustainability, they moved to a more mature approach to this trend, because if in 2020 the consumer was just interested into sustainability and buying more into sustainability, in 2021 they're talking about social justice. So consumers not only they give a different value, a stronger value to sustainability and eco-friendly products and collections, but also they are talking about social justice. So they're caring about where the product has been made, and they really want that level of traceability. Regarding emerging brands and how they can work on that, so probably the answer is it's a big answer, but a good perspective could be looking at the sourcing. So when emerging designers they are sourcing the suppliers, the big effort can be made there, and probably it's easier for them comparing to established brand that they have to change the whole supply chain, because emerging brands, they can make these responsible choices from day one, from the beginning of the business, of their journey into fashion. So differently from established brand that at the moment they are, hiring consultants in order to change the whole supply chain. Emerging brands, they have this incredible opportunity to make the right choices for sourcing and for the strategy behind the selection of the suppliers from the beginning. So
And
it
maybe
might look as a
one thing could be
yeah.
the dead stock fabrics, because I know that's one of the main problems is always the minimums that new designers have to face when getting textiles. So even maybe working together with the
Tackling that.
suppliers at the mills, sort of saying whatever's dead stock, let me use that as well.
Yeah, it could be that stock, but again, something that is sustainable is something that lasts. So if the real good choice is done at the sourcing level, part of the traceability is already sorted. So it's just a case to select the right suppliers and really having those responsible choices from the beginning of the journey.
And also, distribution is sort of the last mile, isn't it? It's when maybe the product goes from the store, from the online to the consumer. And I know something that LVMH is doing is they're actually focusing a lot on bike couriers as like a way to sort of being environmental friendly and having, I think obviously there's limitations in that as well, but I like this first, this approach of sort of having a bike courier starting to deliver your stuff. And they're really good also in timing, and with the consumer, they let them know exactly up until like 10
Yeah.
minutes before, they have, it's very good, the time management of the delivery. So there's lots of
Yeah.
options that we need to take into consideration for the sustainable
And
side.
another, yeah, and another approach in order to be sustainable for distribution, not so many brands are reflecting on that, but considering this digital acceleration, another big issue is the wrong sizing and the returns. So at the moment, there are so many, fashion tech companies. I saw also in Startup Bootcamp that they're coming out, and the USP is providing a solution for reducing the number of the returns from the e-commerce. Because even that aspect can contribute in the big sustainability commitment that everyone is talking about. Because
Yeah,
if you think about the incredible number of returns from everyone,
absolutely.
luxury brand, no luxury brand, so there are more and more softwares that are coming out for that, and
Yeah,
they're
like
trying to resolve this big
virtual
issue.
showrooms. I know Amazon
Yeah.
when they launched their
I Fit You is another one from
yeah.
from Switzerland. I Fit You. So also that approach is so
And
important in order to
yes,
really make a change.
that's really cool because I know with Amazon you can actually see that dress, which is really great because they're super inclusive. You can see it on different skin tones and different sizes, which is really great. And I know I was
Yeah,
reading somewhere, I think I can't remember, it's 55 or 58% of returned goods are returned because of sizing, and that is a huge
yeah,
amount. It's
yeah.
an
And if you
extreme
think
amount.
for an emerging brand who is already managing shipping costs through the online, to manage also the returns is an extra cost to the long list of costs. So
Absolutely.
emerging brands, as I said before, emerging brands, they have this huge opportunity to make the right choices from the beginning of the journey.
Absolutely. Sennait, thank you so much. What can I ask you to give? What advice would you give to the designers here at Costa Rica Fashion Week?
So my last thought, probably I might be a broken record, but I really believe that they have carte blanche for really making the change. So my recommendation is that they should be innovative, they should be brave and ready to embrace this huge opportunity to rewrite fashion. It's an incredible historical moment. It seems that the whole system has some incredible issues, so it's time to rewrite, and probably emerging designers, they have this huge opportunity to have a leading voice in these incredible changing times that we are all living. So
Awesome.
yeah, this is my thought to them.
Thank you so much, Sennait. Really appreciate your time with us today.
Thank
I know it's
you.
evening in London right now, but thank you. Really
Thank,
appreciate it, and speak to you soon.
thank you very much.
All right. Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you
Bye
very
bye.
much. Bye bye, Massimo. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hola. Hola. Bye bye.